Hello, everyone. My name is Jesse Beeson, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the Portland Commissioner Position 2 debate, Part 2 from City Club. We are live on YouTube with candidates Sam Chase, Julia DeGraw, Tara Hurst, and Dan Bryan. Before we dive into today's debate, a reminder for folks that today is actually the second of two City Club debates for Position 2. 8 candidates were so close in supporting numbers that we felt it only fair to feature all of them. So we split them up into two debates, the first of which aired last Friday. To determine which candidate would be in which debate, well, we used an app, and the candidates' names were chosen randomly by that app. If you missed last week's debate with Margot Black, Cynthia Castro, Polo Catalani, and Loretta Smith, fear not. You can find it and all of City Club's programming on our website for the duration of the primary election season, along with other in-depth local election coverage. I said it last week, and it's still true. We are living in unparalleled times. This virus has laid bare that our health, our economy, and our democracy are inextricably linked, and civic engagement is more critical now than ever. That's why City Club has shifted all of our election programming online to be free for everyone. This is no easy feat, and City Club has relied on revenue from tickets to our in-person events to sustain our work. So to continue this important civic programming, I am asking you to donate today. We are all in this together, and if every viewer donated $5 right now, we would reach our goal to continue offering this important space for democracy for every Portlander. You can donate right now by texting Support City Club to 44321. That's Support City Club, all one word, to 44321. And like I did last week, I'm going to do that real quick. I'm going to make a new message, 44321, and Support City Club. How easy is that? All right, I want to encourage folks to engage in today's conversation online as if we're all in the room together. Send us your questions and your comments by emailing us at questions@pdxcityclub.org, or engage with us on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook using @PDXCityClub or the hashtag CityClubDebate. You can also use the YouTube comment section. And of course, thank you in advance for your patience and your grace with any technical difficulties we may encounter. Whether you ask a question, share the link with a friend, or just watch the debate to get informed, all of us at City Club want to thank you for participating today. Thanks also to our sponsors, SEIU 49 and The Standard. And in addition, thank you to our amazing media partners, X-Ray FM and KGW. Democracy must press on, and in fact, we have a number of important online events coming up. Just 4 days from now, on April 28th, we'll have the City Council Position 1 debate. On May 1st, join us for the Metro District 5 debate, and on May 8th, we'll have our May ballot measure forum. We hope to see all of you there, so please mark your calendars and subscribe to our YouTube channel today at youtube.com/pdxcityclub. Now, please join me in welcoming today's candidates for Portland Commissioner Position 2, at least 4 of them. Sam Chase, Julia DeGraw, Tara Hurst, and Dan Ryan. In a moment, each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves before we dive into the questions for the day. Each question has a 60-second time limit for candidate responses, with no time for rebuttals, so we have more time for your questions. We will also do a brief one-word lightning round. And finally, we'll end with each candidate for 2 minutes. We'll have their closing statement. Now, there is a timer off the screen that only the candidates and I can see, which will indicate when time is up. We ask the candidates to finish your statements and responses when your time is up, or I will be saying something. The speaking order for the opening and closing statements, along with the questions, were determined at random using that app ahead of time. Let's get started. We'll begin with Julia, followed by Sam, Tara, and Dan. Julia, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you so much, Jesse, and thank you, the City Club of Portland, for hosting this debate. I think it's a really invaluable service to all Portland voters to be able to have this information, especially during a shelter-at-home order. So again, my name is Julia DeGraw. I'm running for Portland City Council, position 2, and that might sound familiar to some of you because I ran for this seat in 2018. I ran on a platform of accepting no corporate cash, and that was before we passed a ballot measure to create contribution limits in the city of Portland elections. I actually worked on that ballot measure because I'm extremely serious about getting big money out of politics in Portland and in our state. I also ran on a system change platform because I recognize the need to create a system that more adequately represents and equitably represents the city, the people of the city of Portland. I've spent my 15-year career taking on powerful corporate interests and winning on behalf of people. And I think one of the best examples of this was the 10-year fight that I helped lead to protect our public water in the Columbia River Gorge from a Nestle water bottling facility. That kind of tenaciousness, fighting the long fight with a broad coalition, it really demonstrates my commitment to winning on behalf of people and taking on powerful interests to do so. I am, in order to make sure that we represent people of Portland better and to addressing this crisis, we have to have a system that better represents all the people of our city. And that's why I'm hoping to have your vote on May 19th for Portland City Council. Thank you. Oh, I just realized I have actually quite a few more seconds than I realized. But anyway, this also means we have to dismantle the commission form of government so we can have representatives that better that actually focus on serving their constituents rather than running the daily operations of city bureaus. I think that we'll be better at emergency management and serving the people of the city if we have elected officials that are actually accountable to the people who got them into office. And that's what I'm going to fight for on behalf of all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Sam?
Thank you. My name is Sam Chase. I'm running for Portland City Council, and I have spent my life working in community service and public service, addressing poverty, living wage jobs, affordable housing, and our environment. And it's absolutely critical right now that we have leaders with the experience to deliver on some really huge challenges we have ahead of us, addressing our COVID crisis and making sure people are safe and taken care of, and getting our economy going back as quickly as we possibly can through support for small business, supporting culturally specific communities in that effort, in creating living wage jobs and bringing back those jobs, in addressing our transportation challenges and really reducing congestion and reducing our carbon footprint at the same time, bringing our parks system back to the gem that it needs to be with a sustainable funding strategy, and reforming our city council form of government. We really need a new structure. I've spent my life following my heart to where I can have the greatest impact. And I've spent most of my life working in community service and the nonprofit sector and coalition building. But I've found I'm really able to get things done as Nick Fish's chief of staff. Really learned a tremendous amount from him, who was a tremendous mentor. Going to Metro and shifting Metro into a role where it really took on equity and poverty and affordable housing, and building a affordable housing strategy for the entire region at the economy of scale that we need to deliver on affordable housing. I want to take that experience to the city of Portland and make sure that we're really tackling those challenges, and then we're spending our housing dollars in a way that really gets the most we can out of them, reducing the cost of building housing, making sure the services are where they need to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Tara, your opening statement.
Sorry about that. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to the City Club, and especially the staff, who has done an incredible job pulling this all together and being flexible and turning on a dime. So we appreciate you and appreciate all of the work that has gone into this, and to the sponsors and media who are putting this on. It's really critical. So my name is Tara Hurst, and I'm running for Portland City Council position 2. A little bit about me: I'm a single mom working full-time and sole provider for my 13-year-old son, Elliot. I'm proud to have 23 years of sobriety, which began when I was 19, driving around all night in my friend's car so that I wouldn't change my mind before getting a bed in rehab the next morning. I didn't take a traditional path. I got my degree in social work at Portland State in my 30s. And truly, I wouldn't be here without the community who has supported me. We are witnessing how supportive our community can be in a crisis. And we're also seeing how epically our safety net is failing so many we love. These are extremely hard times, but I know we can get through it. So for those of you who don't know me, for those of you who do know me, you know I don't give up easily. I fight for the people and community I care about, and I don't shy away from a challenge. From working in the state capitol to navigating City Hall as deputy and then chief of staff to Mayor Hales, to leading the biggest, most intersectional climate coalition, fighting for and winning real climate action in our state. I have the leadership, experience, and heart that Portland needs to tackle the challenges facing our city. Thank you so much, and I hope I earn your vote this primary.
Thank you, Tara. Dan will close out with you.
Yes. Thank you, Jesse, and thank you, City Club members and guests. Welcome to my living room. I sure wish I could see you, but I'm so thrilled that you turned in. I was born and raised in Portland. I'm the youngest of 8. I left Portland after graduating from Roosevelt High School, and I returned in 1995. After spending a couple months in the hospital with late-stage HIV symptoms, I was told to make plans. As such, I came home to die. A few months later, new drugs moved my diagnosis from immediately terminal to a manageable chronic illness. I was given a second chance, and so I suited up to serve my city. At Portland State, I raised $200 million for the first ever capital campaign. I helped keep the dancers on stage at Oregon Ballet Theater during the onset of the Great Recession. I was elected to the Portland Public School Board, where we insisted the breakdown of data by race and allocated more resources, finally, to culturally specific nonprofit partners. I was selected as the CEO for the Portland Schools Foundation, where I led the effort to increase our footprint to all the school districts in Portland. Since east of PPS, we have much larger numbers of students in poverty and of color. I mobilized a public and private effort to really tackle the high school graduation rate. And in 6 years, our city finally increased graduation rates by double digits, and we accelerated progress for 2 priority populations, African Americans and Latinx. To me, equity is a verb. It is about action and results. Because people know I have a track record of getting results and bringing people together to solve complex local problems, and because they see me to stick with the job beyond the early years of vision and proclamation and promise to actually getting it done, they called me when this seat opened up. We all know we were in a crisis before COVID-19 when it comes to our lack of progress tackling homelessness, housing, and transportation. Those same issues are only going to need more focused attention now. It's time to think out of the box and build the city we deserve, and I really look forward to today's dialogue.
Thank you, Dan. And thank you all for those opening statements. We're now going to move into the prepared questions portion, where each of you will have 60 seconds to answer. We're going to start off with the direction of the city. Where are we headed in the right direction as a city, and where are the places that we need course correction? Sam, we're going to start with you, followed by Tara, then Julia, then Dan.
Well, we're headed in the right direction in terms of moving forward on our housing and homelessness agenda. And I am really pleased that the mayor and Commissioner Fish joined the efforts at Metro to get a regional funding strategy passed. I worked many, many years of my life to get there. We got a bond measure passed that is now funding the affordable housing at the very lowest income levels region-wide. All the cities and counties are on board. That is a game changer in terms of us delivering those resources. Now we have to be very careful about how we spend those, and the city of Portland needs to step up and really have accountability and deliver on a comprehensive housing package that really drives down the cost of building housing. There are a number of different kinds of strategies in my housing plan. It's online, samchaseforportland.com. Please visit and look at my housing plan on how we can move that forward. We also, my time's up. Thank you.
Time's up. Next up, we have Tara.
Yeah, thank you. So I think that right now it's hard to picture where we're on the right track and the wrong track going through this crisis together. On the right track for where Portland headed into this and what we're doing now, I would say that, our community is extremely strong, and we get together and we step up for each other and we take care of each other for the most part. Financially, walking into this crisis, we were in pretty good shape fiscally. We had reserves built up, and we are going to be able to at least address the immediate needs at the beginning of this crisis. We have so much work to do, and we know that the issues plaguing our city are not unique even to Portland. We're talking about folks living on our streets, our houseless population. I walk from my neighborhood where I live in sunny, and I'm done. Sorry, y'all.
A minute's much faster than 2, right? Julia, your response.
Yes, so it's similar response in that I think the fact that we're in the middle of a global pandemic shifts how one would answer this question. I agree that the city is overall heading in the right direction on housing, but I think we've fallen short on the short-term solutions that are needed to put folks who are currently living on the streets into shelters. And I think there's an aversion to the liability with finding properties and putting people up in actual, tiny home villages. But that's going to be what it takes. And I think using this emergency funding to make sure we get people off the streets is going to be a crucial part of how we respond and get this city heading in the right direction in the short term of getting people actually in shelters. And something else I think we could be doing better moving forward, and that the commission form of government actually makes challenging, is just working more collaboratively with each other across bureaus and across the commissions, as well as across jurisdictions. We've started doing that really well during this crisis, but I think we need to continue doing that in all of our work.
Thank you, Julia. Dan.
Yeah, well, I agree that COVID-19 has really changed everything, and it's just having a devastating impact on so many of us, especially those who are already on the margins for survival. So I think we have to really double down with our equity lens and know that this isn't a time to take a break on that. I've really been impressed with Portland really leaning in to racial equity over the last decade, and I think now's the time to even be more sharp with that. I think that we were in a crisis before this with many of our big issues like housing and homelessness and transportation, because I think what we're doing wrong right now is we haven't been as inclusive as we need to be in terms of getting to solution. I think we need to bring more people to the table and also bring back more public and private partnership. The COVID-19 pandemic is going to force us to think out of the box and really look into the innovation that can come from the community. That's where our assets are. So I will lean into the best community assets we have, which are the people in this town that have always been able to get things done.
Thank you, Dan. All of you have mentioned the impacts of COVID-19, and indeed we're seeing significant potential cuts facing the city, astronomically unseen before. How do you go about cutting services that deeply in a way that doesn't disproportionately affect the folks that have been left out, folks with disability, people of color, people with less wealth? We're going to start with Sam, then Dan, Tara, then Julia. Sam?
Thank you. Well, a number of things. We've got to lead with culturally specific communities being at the table, because those are the communities that are getting hit the hardest. We've got to step up and support small business, get our living wage jobs back online. We can't pay for all the city services that we need unless we have economy that is strong. So that's I think a critical component. We also have to be very smart about cutting programs where there's a large admin budget. At Metro, I found a program that was 50% admin. I cut it down to 20% during my time, and it was something that affected all a number of Metro programs throughout the region and cities and counties. So we can also look to the programs and really ask very difficult questions and really push to reduce some of the costs within our government structure. And then we need to be very transparent and open.
Thank you very much. I forgot my order.
I think I'm next.
I think you are.
So, as I said earlier, COVID-19 has just changed everything, and everything is not going to be the same. And so there's this acceptance we're all going through. I've been impressed with how I've seen city and county government work together, in my opinion, like never before. And I think we have to continue to look for those streamlined opportunities where we can merge services and make sure that we really stay focused on our values and really care for those who have been historically harmed. I think that this is an opportunity to reset on prioritizing our communities of color and poverty and making them be in the front of the line. I thought Prosper Portland did an amazing job with implementing such practices with their financial assistance program. And I think public health, emergency services, police, fire, parks, all our utilities, we just have to keep streamlining those services with the county to make sure our residents are safe and they were sheltered and they were fed. We have to keep currency going. That's one of my biggest issues right now. And I'm looking for creative solutions on how we can keep our small businesses intact. I love an example I've seen in Camas, Washington recently, where residents can shop locally and then use their receipts up to $75 to take off from their utility.
Thanks, Sam. Mm-hmm. Tara.
Keep trying your Command D, but it's not working for me. This is a really hard time for our city, and it's going to be even harder with the budgets. We're looking at a 2-year at least recovery scene, and everybody knows that. And this is unprecedented. So we're going to have to break down the silos that have historically existed between the city, the county, the state. We can't rely on our federal government, but we do have a strong federal delegation who can continue to fight to get as much money and as much resources to Portland. Our resources aren't just dollars. Portlanders are extremely creative and innovative, and we have an incredible technology community here as well. And I think we really need to learn how to tap into those and utilize those in the best possible way. In order to do it equitably, one of the things I did when we were chief of staff of the mayor's office was prioritizing that the Office of Equity was at the table when we were doing our budget decisions and budget making. And that was critical.
Thank you, Tara. Julia.
All right, so yes, 1 minute is a short period of time. But in terms of internally within the city, as we face these massive budget shortfalls, we need to make sure that the cuts that are being made are distributed within the city equitably. And that means that if we're going to make folks in the city take furloughs, those who are at a higher pay rate should take more furlough time than those at a lower pay rate. That's what I mean about equity. We also need to look at things like staff to management ratios. This is similar to what Sam was talking about. If you have a person who's managing just 1 or 2 staff and you're paying them a management level, like that's, if we really get the management to staff ratio more reasonable, that'll free up money to pay workers and employees at the city who are providing direct services to people. So I think we really need to take a hard look at how we're spending the current money we have more efficiently. In addition to exploring how we use the emergency funds that are going to be coming in from the federal government in an equitable way, and engaging communities that are going to need those funds to support them, and the policies we're going to create to support them so that everyone's engaged in the process in a transparent way.
Thank you, Julia. Nearly all of you in your opening statements mentioned Portland's form of government. And of course, you know that last year City Club released a report examining Portland's unique commission form of government. In that report, they recommended 3 reforms. First, that Portland must transition to a modified council manager form of government. 2, Portland must increase the size of city council. And 3, Portland must change how city councilors are elected by switching to some form of district-based elections. You all mentioned generally being in favor, but what's your take on the specific recommendations? And should the process be city-driven or citizen-driven? We'll start with Dan, then Tara, Sam, then Julia.
Yeah, thank you, City Club, first of all, for raising this common sense awareness on this absurd, archaic form of government. And I think we can take steps as soon as possible. I would like to find 2 more votes to begin the hiring of a city manager, and we can ensure we have a seasoned professionals leading bureaus, which we accept a government like all other cities across the country, with an executive branch and a legislative branch. Together, we can focus on the top priorities and not hide out in our bureaus. So first, is the most significant is the systemic change that I see coming from that. You must start there. We can increase the number of seats, and we just need to keep the cost neutral. So if we increase the number of seats, then we have to have smaller staffs. I'm a big believer in geographic representation. In fact, the PPS board already has that in place with zone representation. I'm the only person, by the way, running in all of these races on the city council from North Portland, and an address that was established actually at the same time as the rest in 1933, I believe. I look forward to seeing this change happen ASAP.
Thank you, Dan. Tara.
I'm not doing well in my technology today. I'm sorry. The commission form of government, quite frankly, is failing our city, and it hasn't worked for some time. It's not representing our city, and I do support the City Club report. You know, our commissioners are elected for their values and their leadership. That's why you're listening to us and hearing, you know, what we bring to the table. And none of us, I don't think, are necessarily experts in installing sewer pipes. We need experts for that. Our city commissioners should be there for their values, for their leadership, and to make decisions on people, on behalf of the people who live in their district. We need to make sure that we have the district representation so that, you know, we're held accountable. It's really hard to hold elected officials accountable when they're citywide. We need more folks in there bringing different perspectives and different life experiences to the table as we make critical decisions on how to move our city forward. I agree with city manager, having a strong city manager as well.
Thanks, Tara. Sam.
Thank you. We absolutely need a new city council form of government. I've worked closely inside the city council form of government, and I've worked at Metro where we've had a more centralized place with governance with districts. We need districts so that all parts of our city are represented. We need a centralized manager so that we have coordination amongst our bureaus. We need electeds to be focusing on the policy making, not on administering and really collaborating. It forces collaboration and transparency. I think we have a truly unique opportunity to get this done. It's going to be a city citizen together. I think working through this, I really want the city to partner with City Club to get to really inform the community about our choices, to make sure that we're getting everything thought through, and then put this on the ballot and get it passed once and for all. I've got a lot of experience passing measures on the ballot. I think that's the way to go, and I think we really have an incredible opportunity to be successful.
Thank you, Sam. Julia?
Yes, so I actually campaigned on this issue in 2018 because I really didn't feel like it was fair to tell voters that we can solve our big systemic problems without changing our system, because it was so apparent that the system was failing to serve people and absolutely failing to adequately represent them. So I definitely support the system change. We absolutely need to increase the size of the council. We've had 5 people representing our city since the population was about 200,000. We've grown immensely since then. In order for an elected official to be accountable to their constituents, they need to be elected by city council district and have more people on council in order for them to be representing a smaller number of people. This will also make it easier for women and people of color to run for office and to win. This also means we need to shift to a more professionalized management of the city council. I support community engagement in the charter review process. I think the City Club and Coalition of Communities of Color are going to be key in that. Having that ballot referral from the Charter Review Commission will be key.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you. Yep.
So district-based elections are about geographic representation, and I think all of you are aware that the Office of Community and Civic Life has made a proposal to change the city code to give community-based civic organizations the same kind of representation that geographically based neighborhood associations have had for decades. We don't need to hear your thoughts on the process that the city's been through thus far, but rather the outcome. What do you see the advantages of this approach, this proposed approach, and what are the pitfalls? We're going to start with Tara, then Julia, Sam, then Dan. Tara?
Thanks. You know, I think that neighborhood associations play a key role in our city, and they have historically for years. However, it's not representative of the entire city or the entire city views, and it's critical that we are also funding our community organizations and our culturally specific organizations to engage in these processes. It shouldn't be such an outsized voice just from neighborhood associations, and that doesn't mean that we take away their voice. It just means that we need to create more space at the table for more perspectives and more views. So that would be ultimately the, if you're saying, what do you want the outcome to be? I want the outcome to have a much broader perspective at the table and what we want to see and fresh ideas and the innovation that we need to be seeing in this city to have a real vision forward. We can't just be worried about what's going to happen in our neighborhood.
Thank you, Tara. Julia.
Yes, I think the goals of the code change were spot on. We need to support the community organizations in a similar way that we support the neighborhood associations, and there needs to be a more equitable way in which the resources are made available to community organizations in the city of Portland. And I think, frankly, I would increase the ability of citizens to directly engage with their city government moving forward. So I think that the charter review process that happens once a decade that starts in 2021 is going to be another opportunity for us to take another shot at this. If we're changing our form of government, creating city council districts, that actually forces us to really re-examine how we want to engage with community groups in the city and create better structures for that, and also create better structures for that direct citizen engagement. And I think that this needs to be revisited in the code, in the charter review process, with a lot of direct community engagement to get it right.
Thank you, Julia. Sam, what's your take?
Well, I think of our city as a growing, changing, constantly changing entity that has its own life, and we have to modernize along with that. And an inclusive, engaging path forward is absolutely what we need. And we need to focus on inclusion. We need to include a much broader range of communities. We need to really focus on engaging culturally specific communities. And it's not just inviting them to the table, actually investing and providing capacity support so that the not just individuals, but the communities themselves are empowered with information and decision making to move forward. So I think it's critical that we really embrace and keep those voices at the table as we face so much change.
Thank you, Sam. Dan, last word on this?
Yeah, I think everyone I've talked to at neighborhood associations agrees with the intent of the policy, and they also agree that neighborhood associations must include diverse demographics of their neighborhood, communities of color, new arrivals, refugees, and of course renters. I think that they now have some fire in their belly with this methodical, to include this in a methodical way. I think the accountability to be designed without mandating from the top down is what I've heard from people. Many of these volunteers have been active for years providing service to their fellow neighbors. I just find that top-down mandates avoid building with those on the ground are failures. I've seen this in education for years, and that's why at All Hands Raised, we tested changes on the ground with partners such as teachers, counselors, social workers, youth advocates, and especially youth advocates from culturally specific communities. I think real change happens when you actually go at it together. And so I know that it might feel slow at first, but you actually go much farther. So I really look forward to this policy being implemented. And I think that as a city council member, I will help build bridges so
Thanks,
that we can get there.
Thanks, Sam. You all have talked a lot about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we do that in our city a lot. But I think it's fair to say that progress on ending the inequities and disparities has been piecemeal and slow, and specifically across racial lines. Why? And really, what are you going to do as commissioner to accelerate this progress? We're starting with Dan, then Tara, Julia, and then Sam. Dan.
Yeah. Thank you, Jesse. I think that anytime you're focused on a question about equity, you first need to know the metrics. You need to know the demographics of the population, and then you need to set goals. I find that too many people proclaim to be equity champions, but I can't see their action plan and I'm not seeing things measured. I find that unless you measure the outcomes, then you're not really doing equity work. And so for me, it's not just inclusion, but it's hitting benchmarks. And then when you're not hitting those benchmarks, you take a long evaluation and figure out how to reinvest, repurpose, and include more people at the table to move it along. Equity is something the city is taking a national lead on, and I've been part of that, and I look forward to bringing that to City Hall.
Thank you, Dan. Tara, let's hear from you.
Yeah, so I think I'm gonna probably push back a little bit on this one with what Dan just said. You know, we can't go slow. We've been going slow for a really long time, and we have the data, and we've studied this multiple times. Portland has a racist history. Wow, and we need to work with community groups and give them the resources they need and follow their plans. It's about empowering communities, and it's about making sure that everybody's at the table and making sure that we are stepping back when necessary and when it makes sense. And also, you know, for me, as a white woman, stepping in when it's helpful and using my privilege when that's necessary. We really do need to address the inequities, and that's all the way from making sure that folks are at our budget advisory committees, and we have communities of color engaged in that. We have communities of color engaged in our budget process and at the elected and leadership level.
Thank you, Tara. Julia, let's hear from you.
I am going to risk sounding a little bit like a broken record and say that this really comes back to the system change. The at-large elections we have are innately inequitable and lead to leadership that does not represent communities. It's innately unjust to have at-large election systems. So changing how we actually elect people in the form of government that we have is crucial to actually getting at the equity issues. We need folks in elected office who are more representative of their communities and make it possible for women and people of color to run for office and win at higher numbers. So that's major step number one. Additionally, under the existing system, how we currently operate, we need to directly engage communities in decision-making processes every time from the beginning to the end and resource these communities in ways that they need to help, it's in the ways that they can lead and actually determine how the money is going to be spent. This is especially true in budgeting processes. So basically, we have to do a lot more transparent, direct community engagement and decision-making and how we actually fund our equity goals, not just put words on paper.
Thanks, Julia. Sam?
We have continued to have an institutional racism in so many places in our city, and it's often unconscious, and we elevate for many of us, and we have to elevate and identify and call out those places. And it's not just about engaging folks. It's about really what kind of structural systems can we put in place to truly empower culturally specific communities, underserved communities. And I want to bring a strategy to have like we had at Metro, a committee on racial equity that is directly advising the city electeds, that is choosing the issues where it sees it's most important to engage, and funding those organizations that are highly engaged to not only be at the table, but to be able to engage with their communities and really get the best strategies to move forward. When we lead with race and we support programs by leading with race, everybody wins.
Thank you, Sam. So 2020, we're celebrating, if you can call it that, the 30th anniversary of Measure 5, along with Measure 50. Both of these measures drastically reduce the resources that our local governments and schools have for things like infrastructure, roads, parks, education, and really tackling some of the disparities and inequities you all just talked about. Is that an okay outcome? And if not, what is your approach to funding these things? Julia, we're going to start with you, followed by Sam, then Dan, then Tara.
All right. Well, first of all, I mean, we really do need to revisit those ballot measures. We need to find ways to overturn them, frankly, because we have a massive crisis in this state. and how we raise revenue to fund basic services. Until we're able to do that, though, we need to get really strategic about how we use our existing resources. This means addressing inefficiencies and reprioritizing how we spend existing funds on the things that really, really matter, and doing a better job of pooling resources across bureaus within the city and across jurisdictions within the region, and partnering as strongly as we possibly can with the state and federal government to get as much money as we can from the federal government, which I think is going to be a different ball game right now because of the crisis. There's going to be more money available from the federal level in the short term to address some of our most immediate needs. But we are absolutely going to have to also explore making sure that corporations and wealthy people are paying their fair share in our systems moving forward as well. Systems like the Portland Clean Energy Fund, we need to expand on that kind of model.
Thanks, Julia. Sam.
Well, I would like to take this as an opportunity to look. We have to look for the feds are not going to solve all our problems right now. And yes, we may access some stimulus funds, and we absolutely need to triple down in making sure we're getting every dollar we can. We also have to take control locally of our economy and the things that we need to move forward. I would take this moment to put forward something that is different and a different way of approaching, which is what we've put forward through Metro, and I've worked on for more than a year with the Here Together Coalition to put an initiative on the ballot this May that will fund homeless services. The region will step up and fund homeless services, case management, rent assistance, supports that will get folks stably housed off the streets. It's absolutely critical. I hope folks will support that initiative on the May ballot. It's a wealth tax. It exempts small business and it exempts low and moderate income earners. It's a wonderful plan that we absolutely need.
Thanks, Sam. Dan?
Yeah, Measure 5 was designed to improve equity across the state of Oregon. As such, our city has a steady stream of property tax revenue, and we're a really generous donor to the rest of Oregon, especially in rural settings. However, as a former member of the PPS school board, I was painfully aware that it has created more inequities locally. That is why shortly after Measure 5 was passed, PPS Foundation had to create a shared revenue model for private donations. I further made the flow of those funds more transparent and more equitable by placing an actual equity formula looking at race, poverty, and English language learner demographics. This was a national best practice that large school districts have begun to copy so that we can really be one school district with equity and fairness. Yet locally, PPS, Lake Oswego, Beaverton, they can pass local initiatives where school districts in Portland east of PPS, namely Park Rose, David Douglas, Centennial, they can't pass those operational levels. They struggle to even pass modest capital bonds. So please vote yes on the Centennial levy this May. I just don't think we have responded well to Measure 5 locally over the years, and I will look for opportunities to ensure that East Portland gets more.
Thank you, Dan. Tara?
Yeah, I mean, this is not something to celebrate. Measure 5 and Measure 50 is a antiquated and system that has been completely inequitable for Portland. We faced this head on when dealing with the comprehensive plan when I was in the Hales administration. And, you know, as a mom of a kid at Portland Public Schools, he started kindergarten with 20 kids in his class, and it's moved up to 35, and now he's in 8th grade. It's completely unsustainable. It's not fair to him. It's not fair to the teachers and the support staff and everybody else. We're also 47th in the nation to access to treatment. And we have some of the highest rates of addiction in our country. So we're failing our most vulnerable and our most impacted, and we're also failing our youth, who are who's going to take us to the future in this. I have a lot of experience successfully advocating for issues in Salem, from criminal justice reforms to bold climate action. And I would take those relationships and that experience to make sure that we can change these antiquated property tax systems.
Thank you, Tara. We're going to move to the lightning round, and then we are going to have time for audience questions, plenty of time. So in this lightning round, you get one-word answers only, and we're going to use the same order. So it's going to go Julia, then Sam, then Dan, then Tara. Right? Are we ready for this? Here we go. All right. What neighborhood do you live in, Julia?
Montevilla, east of 82nd.
Sam.
Humboldt.
Dan.
Arbor Lodge, North Portland.
Tara.
Sunnyside, Southeast.
All right. Julia, do you agree with the Oregon Transportation Commission's decision to not pursue an environmental impact assessment for the Rose Quarter Freeway expansion project?
No.
Sam.
Absolutely not, as I voted.
Dan.
No.
Tara.
Nope.
Julia, do you support the current policy that allows Portland police officers to access the names and information of civilians who have filed complaints against them?
No.
Sam.
No.
Dan.
Nope.
Tara.
Nope.
Julia, do you support funding the Open and Accountable Elections program even in rough revenue times?
Yes.
Sam.
Yes.
Dan.
Yes.
Tara.
Yes.
All right. Do you all support the Metro homelessness measure on this May's ballot? I think I know Sam's answer, but Julia, what do you got?
Yes.
Sam?
Could you answer that for me, Jesse?
Dan?
Yes.
Tara?
Absolutely.
All right, last one. This is the hardest. How many episodes of Tiger King have you watched, Julia?
0.
Sam?
1.
Dan?
0.5.
Tara?
I watch it with my son. We've watched about 7.
Thank you for telling the truth, Tara. I know y'all watched it all. All right, I'm just kidding. We are now going to transition to the audience Q&A. For those of you just tuning in, this is City Club of Portland coming to you live from our living rooms and makeshift offices with our second of 2 virtual debates for Commissioner Position 2. I'm your moderator, Jesse Beeson. Please support City Club today, right now, by texting Support City Club to 44321. That's Support City Club, all one word, to 44321. So that we can keep bringing you this kind of important election coverage. We are now going to take questions that we have received from the public. First off, what is your relationship to the police and especially the police union? We'll start with Dan, then Sam, Tara, then Julia. Dan?
Yeah, my relationship with the police is as a person that lives in the city, and I'm grateful when they seem to be doing their job in a community policing type fashion. I have done a lot of ride-alongs in my life, and I think the police show their best when they're more in a social work stance because they're often the front line in dealing with some of our most intense problems. I can't tell you how important it is to continue to do trauma-informed practices with our police, as again, they're on the front lines. And so my door will be open to keep improving so that our police become the most trauma-informed in the nation.
Thank you, Dan. Sam?
Well, I worked extensively with police and fire when I was Nick Fish's chief of staff, and in particular when we had, I think it was called Snowmageddon at that time. It was a week and a half of very cold conditions, and I worked with them to really go and make sure that everybody on our streets was finding shelter, that we were problem solving in shelters. And I saw a really important side of our service there. We need to elevate programs like street response in Lents and make those citywide, where we avoid and don't continue conflicts where it's not necessary to have the police being the first responders. Medics and peer specialists under this program are the first responders when folks are facing maybe mental health challenges, when they're facing drug and substance use challenges, and they are much more successful. They have a great relationship with the police, and the police are there to step in if they need it, if they're needed, or there's safety issues. But it's a great way to have really outcomes that we need.
Thanks, Sam. Tara, what's your relationship?
Yeah, it's a complicated relationship, as any relationship with that big of a group of people. We have a problem with policing, and it's not just in Portland. I worry about my son when he leaves the house for a lot of reasons. He's a skateboarder, and I'm quite frankly worried about alcohol and drugs down the road. But one thing I never have to worry about is him being negatively profiled by the police. That's not the case for a lot of parents in Portland, and it's not okay. It's not the city that I want to live in. I will work to hold bad actors accountable, and we need better training and, quite frankly, a full culture change in the police bureau. And that's going to take all of us. It may feel good to say that we don't want the police or that we love them, but the reality is it's complicated, and public safety is an essential service. And when someone needs an officer, we want them to be able to respond in the time that makes us all feel safe, and we want all of our community to feel safe. So it's a complicated relationship, and it will probably continue to be.
Thank you, Tara. Julia.
Yes, I have a fairly similar response. It's complicated. We live in a city right now where over 70% of Portlanders no longer have trust in the police. That's a really sad statistic, and it's a pretty recent statistic, and we have to start rebuilding that trust, and that begins with accountability. And when I was the executive director at Portland Forward, I was partnering with organizations across the city to focus on police accountability and help build that into the police contract negotiations, make sure that those processes are more transparent and the community voices are heard and engaged in that process. I think that's really crucial to start this process of rebuilding trust. And I also agree that the straight response is a really important program that we need to be expanding so that we aren't expecting our officers to be social workers, right? We should have appropriate first responders to get the best results for the folks who are in need in our city. And really start focusing on rebuilding the trust between community members and the police, which I believe strongly starts with accountability.
Thank you, Julia. What is a position that differentiates you from others in this race? We're going to start with Tara, then Julia, then Dan, then Sam.
I think it's pretty clear that we all share similar values. I think for me, it's really about what is our perspectives and what's our experience. And that's really what sets me apart. One of the components that, one of the perspectives that I can bring as somebody who has actually had to access services, if I hadn't been able to get to detox when I was 19 and go to treatment, I wouldn't be here today. There's just no world that I would actually stay alive. And I understand what it is, what it's like when you are ready to get clean and sober, and when that help is there. We aren't doing that for Portlanders right now. We have 6-month waiting lists for sober houses, 2-week waiting list to get somebody into treatment. That's life and death, and that's our community. And that's the perspective that, I bring because of the struggles that I've had and a past that I've had. And I think that that's what sets me apart. I also have extensive experience in City Hall.
Thank you, Tara. Julia.
Yeah, I think what makes me stand out among all the other candidates is that I've been pushing for system change before the City Club report was published. I knew it was coming. I was very excited about it. I was hoping it would come out in the middle of my last campaign, but it did not. But I was willing to stick my neck out on that before it became an issue that everyone was talking about, because I recognized it as core to creating the change that Portlanders need and deserve. I was serious about getting big money out of politics long before we passed ballot measures to get big money out of politics. So I've been leading on these issues. Every one of us is participating in open and accountable elections. But I took no corporate cash before that program was even available. So my actions match my values in a very strong way. And I also have a broad depth of experience on a variety of issues, including municipal broadband and a variety of environmental and water issues that make me ready to hit the ground running to do this job as soon as I'm elected.
Thank you, Julia. Dan.
Yes, thank you. I think my personal experience of living through a pandemic myself, coupled with my own recovery experience, gives me a lot of life experience to understand the complexity of science right now and how we translate that to our citizens. I think that my experience with forming partnerships in the community in a public-private partnership gives me a leg up. And I think it's something that we've become less tolerant of at City Hall over the last decade. And that's one reason we're stuck on a lot of our big issues. I also think I bring an executive experience, running a payroll. And I found that during the open and elected process, there's been some people that thought there was a grayness about, can we take our funds and repurpose them and give them to other organizations? And to me, there's nothing gray about that. It's donor intent. And the only way you could pass them on to others is if you asked that person that gave you your campaign if, in fact, they would be okay with that. So I think my lifelong experience is exactly what we need during this crisis.
Thank you, Dan. Sam?
Well, I think where I stand out is having spent my life really focused on poverty and living wage job creation and affordable housing and helping people. I helped a family early in my career in a nonprofit when I was building affordable housing go from homelessness to home ownership in 2 years, and recognize that one family was just one story amongst many tens and hundreds of thousands of people in our region, and really approaching the solutions at an economy of scale that are truly going to make a big difference. And I took that experience and advocated for urban renewal reforms that fundamentally changed our urban renewal system from one that was displacing people, and we still continue to have challenges, but to one that was heavily investing in affordable housing, in addressing poverty, and getting at least 30% of all urban renewal funds in place permanently, and going and learning to how to govern and take those big solutions to places like Metro, where you wouldn't expect big solutions to happen, and getting an affordable housing package throughout the entire region.
Thank you, Sam. And we're coming right back to you with this question. What is your take on the arts tax? Should it be repealed, drastically changed, kept alone? Sam, you're first, followed by Tara, Julia, then Dan.
Oh, this is a good one. This one has not come up. I do think we need to take a look at the arts tax, but I think we need to look at the whole system. One of the things I think that the city has are the P5. They have the Schnitz, the Newmark, the Keller. They own those properties, and those are in disarray. They are very troubled properties, and we don't have a strategic plan for those. So I think we need to be thinking long term about that infrastructure and how we can really support arts, how we elevate and bring forward communities, underserved communities, and help tell their stories at the same time. So I think there's an incredible amount of work in front of us in that area, and creating a sustainable long-term path for arts to really thrive is fundamental.
Thank you, Sam. Tara, let's hear from you.
I'm a huge supporter of the arts. And, I think the arts tax was kind of a mismanaged, unfortunately, and it's a regressive tax and it costs more to administer. That being said, I would be all into ensuring that we are figuring out a way to fund our arts. And if that's the best way, then let's, we've made improvements and we should continue to do that. I appreciate personally that there are art teachers in my son's school, and that he's actually able to take art, as somebody who has shown that he has some artistic talents. It's nice to see those encouraged and supported. This city is built on artists and with artists. And so we need to continue to cultivate that. And I think it's really important that we send the message that we care about the arts and that it's a part of our community and our culture. We need to do that fairly and equitably, and we need to make sure that it's being administered and it's not something that, becomes kind of a runaway cost.
Thank you, Tara. Julia, what's your take?
Yeah, my take is that it has not been, it costs us almost as much money to process this tax as it's raising, right? We have major problems with how this tax is working out right now. I do believe that we need to change it to find a way to make it work better. We absolutely need to fund arts. And we also need to make sure that funding is being distributed in a way that's more equitable. This has been an artist town where people could be an artist and have a job and live here. It's no longer that way. The cost of living is skyrocketing, and artists are getting squeezed out. So we need to find a way to use these funds in a way that's more equitable and directly supports artists who are trying to make a living in our city, in addition to trying to keep these big art institutions, alive and going. But basically, finding a more equitable way to administer these funds and finding a more efficient way to run the program are crucial to make it actually work.
Thank you, Dan. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think.
Thank you, Julia. Dan, what do you think?
Thank you.
As a person that comes from the arts as a theater and speech major, I am just a big advocate. And I think that we need people with an arts background actually in City Hall. I think that the arts tax needs to be looked at so it actually has impact. I think it was watered down so much that it has lacked that. In fact, I know when I was at the ballet, we were so excited to finally think that we were going to have some stability in our funding. And unfortunately, the way it got watered down is that they are receiving much less. Every great city has strong anchor arts organizations, whether it's the ballet, the symphony, the opera, and we also need strong grassroots arts organizations. I always remember my first job at Portland State University in the School of Fine and Performing Arts. Artists gather and they stay together. I just really think that we need to have a more robust investment in our arts organizations because like parks and like the schools, it's what brings us together and it's what brings us joy. I look forward to being a most fierce arts advocate on City Council.
Thank you, Dan. I want to talk about air quality now. We know that folks who live in apartments in close proximity to 405 and other freeways, other central city locations like Old Town, mostly very low income and often people of color. And that area suffers some of the worst air and noise pollution in the cities. And the streets are still largely managed for commuters rather than residents who don't even have cars. Yet the only low-income neighborhoods that these folks seem to think that we hear about are those on the east side. How will you bring some balance to the discussion, especially with regard to the Portland Clean Energy Fund spending, Peabot Greenway spending, and urban forestry street tree spending? We're going to start with Julia, then Sam, then Dan, then Tara. Julia?
All right, that is a huge question to answer in one single minute. So I'm going to say that we absolutely need to be investing in air quality, in solutions to our climate change crisis and our traffic issues in a more holistic way. This means as we improve roads, that we do so in a way that makes them safer for pedestrians and cyclists and make them more transit centric. We need to vastly expand transit to get people out of their cars, as well as start enforcing cleaner diesel regulations statewide. We have the dirtiest diesel in the West Coast, right? So there's so many layers of how we can address our air quality, but it means funding all three of those programs that you were talking about, and making sure that we are responding to the neighborhoods that have the worst air quality in a holistic manner, and really investing in expanding transit and electrification of transit, and improving our roads in a way that's less car-centric long term in order to solve these problems permanently.
That was a lot in a minute. You did great. All right, Sam, what's your take?
Diesel particulates are one of the most toxic air emissions we have in our city. We are living in more dense form. We are living where, and we absolutely have to take care of this for our overall quality of life, for our contributions to the climate and global warming. It is something that we need to move forward on getting diesel out of the air. So construction equipment is actually surprisingly problematic in this area. We need to do the legislation I introduced to significantly reduce and require our contracts to take out dirty diesel need to be funded. I want the city to be as aggressive as Metro was on that. Low income, getting transit to move much quicker through areas. Electric buses are priorities that will help reduce the diesel use.
Thank you, Sam. Dan?
Yeah, I think if there's a silver lining of COVID-19, it's that it's allowed me, for sure, to take a breath and just notice how wonderful it is to see our carbon emission dramatically decrease. It also reminds me how important densely populated walkable neighborhoods are with access to transit that frequently runs. And I think that in this time of COVID-19, we can also look at the data that shows the neighborhoods that were mentioned with the most needs to increase the tree canopy, to make sure that when we're making tough budget cuts that we continue to have access to parks. I know that my friends that are in apartments really are in need of fresh air during this time, whereas I'm very privileged to have a backyard. And so I really think the pivot of COVID-19 will really increase our urgency to just do what is common sense as we take care of our planet as it's screaming at us to do so.
Thank you, Dan. Tara, last word on this one.
Yeah, so this is the climate crisis, and we have been aware of it and fighting it for decades. And I've been doing this the last couple of years as the executive director of the largest intersectional climate coalition. We need to price pollution, and we need to invest in solutions. It sounds simple, and it's extremely hard when you're going up against the biggest best funded corporations in the world. Portland Clean Energy Fund, as you asked, is a great program, and it's one that we absolutely have to make sure is implemented well and we can show the successes quickly, because these are the programs that are under attack from polluters. And we're going to have to make sure that it's successful, and I am committed to making sure that we do the implementation right and we show the data that it's working. Our kids have lungs forming in these apartment buildings and in these high traffic corridors, and we have to protect those. This is yeah.
Thank you. So I want to ask about, you all are filling a term. And so you'll have 2 years to accomplish work. What do you hope to accomplish in that 2-year time period? And how do you propose to begin working with your city council colleagues upon starting? We're going to go with Dan, then Tara, then Sam, then Julia. Dan?
Yeah. Well, on day one, I'm going to act as if we've already changed the charter. I want to work with the team of other electeds to be focused on our top priorities. And I hope in my first 2 years, in partnership with the City Club, that we can definitely see a radical change to that charter, and at least start with a real executive branch and a real legislative branch. That would be my other focus will be to really focus on our small businesses and make sure that during this time of crisis, that where most of you work, many in the creative class work in small businesses, that you can go back to your jobs. We have to keep currency flowing. So it might be a smaller number. We're all going to have shared sacrifice, but we have to figure out how to work with our private industry to make sure that the currency flows. So we have revenues, even in these tough times, that will continue to flow in.
Thank you, Dan. Tara?
Yeah, so, I think that I may have started this journey with different priorities, but walking into a financial crisis and a healthcare crisis is really changing things. We had 3 crises when we walked in, to me, climate, houselessness, and our housing affordability. And we are still going to need to keep our eye and continue to work on those. And we also are going to be faced with the challenge of extreme budget cuts and making sure that we are supporting and keeping our small businesses open and making sure they have the funds flowing to them so that they don't have to close and they can hire back up. We're going to have to make sure that, we don't lose any more families into houselessness because they can't pay their rent. And we need to make sure that we are taking care of our seniors who rely on fixed incomes and maybe also rental properties. So there's a lot that needs to happen in the next 2 years. My goal would be to get this city back up and running and making sure that the least amount of devastation has happened to our most vulnerable populations.
Thank you, Tara. Sam, your first 2 years, what's up?
Thank you. There's a tremendous amount of work that needs to happen. The 2 areas I'm going to be hyper-focused is really rebuilding our community from this pandemic and making sure that we are taking care of folks who are getting left behind, and making sure we're rebuilding our economy, supporting small business, getting workers back into the system, accessing every dollar, dedicating our city staff to accessing every dollar we can for our business community and culturally specific business community. An example of what I would not do, the city put out a resource that was available to only 200 business, 11,000 business applied. That's a a waste that's inefficient. We need to be more targeted in how we're delivering our resources. And then we need a strategy and a strategic plan on delivering for homelessness and housing and truly addressing chronic homelessness on our streets.
Thank you, Sam. Julia.
I want to push back a little bit earlier on the system change comments that Dan made. We absolutely, part of my legacy in my first 2 years, I want to be about system change because it's going to be crucial to how we recover from this crisis. But I'm deeply committed to making sure that there's broad community engagement in the process, the charter review process in 2021 to make sure that we're getting a system that Portland voters are excited about and that they feel they were engaged in. We've had a lot of attempts to change the system of government from the top down with a top-down method, and it didn't go well. Voters didn't like those strong mayor systems, which generally were produced by that top-down process. So I'm really committed to deep community engagement as we approach system change. And I'm also deeply committed to making sure that we're finding the resources to keep our small businesses afloat. We're a small business town. They create the most jobs in our city. When we keep people employed in small businesses, we're going to keep them housed, right? That's going to be a huge part of addressing the crisis.
Thank you, Julia. As you all may know, yesterday the Oregon Supreme Court upheld the Multnomah County campaign finance contribution measure, very similar to the one in Portland. How do you intend to implement this reform while in office, and what's the next step past just limiting campaign contributions? We're going to go with Dan again, then Sam, then Tara, then Julia.
Well, I actually appreciate the question. I think that kudos to Commissioner Fritz for rewriting the vastly improved and necessary update to the policy that crashed about a decade ago. You learn from your mistakes and you recast it. So clearly it's working and it's promoting more inclusion. You've seen that with this race. We have over 10 candidates in the program, and we need the ceiling for revenue. So I think everyone in the city should actually just be a part of the system. I think we have the solution here at City Hall. I also think the rules are clear, and I just found it odd that of late there's been confusion over some of the use of the public matching funds. And I think we have to always just look in the mirror at how we can take and improve the policies that we have at Portland. And there's no gray area here. If someone gives you a campaign contribution, they gave it to your campaign. And if you want to pass it along, you must ask them. We're public servants and we need to be trusted with the revenue that we receive. I'm so supportive of the current open and accountable elections. And I hope that we can make this practice go statewide.
Thank you, Dan. Sam?
Well, I was so excited about that ruling and celebrated it over the social media immediately. It is something I have had that's been near and dear to my heart for a long, long time. A number of reform packages that have attempted to move forward in Oregon. So I will do everything I can to make sure that we are using our legal team to put our best foot forward in protecting those restrictions. It's great news for democracy. I'm really excited about the Office of Elections and the new city's campaign finance. It's for somebody like me who's spent my life working in community service, building coalitions, working on poverty and the environment. Yeah, the folks that I've been working with can have an incredibly meaningful contribution in this race. They can step up, and with $50, there's a $300 match. And so they have a very powerful voice. And so that's really changed the game for me in terms of building a really an amazing coalition of support in my campaign.
Thank you, Sam. Tara?
Yeah, it's been a good week for Oregon, kind of taking apart some of our antiquated laws. First, non-unanimous juries, and now with campaign finance reform. So, you know, this is a critical component of us making systems changes. This is an important systems change. Being able to participate in the open, accountable election process is the only way that a single mom and a sole provider that's still working full time could even participate in our government and to run for office. So it's also been a really exciting and interesting way to campaign, being able to reach out to folks, and for $5, $10 donations, it really changes the way that we campaign. And I think that's critical. I will absolutely support the work that needs to be done ahead, moving us ahead. And it's it's really a great step in the right direction. And I think that our city, this is something that I was proud that we could work with Fritz's office when I was in the mayor's office.
Thank you, Tara. Julia.
Yeah, so I've been engaged in campaign finance reform for the last few years in a really big way. I helped pass the Honest Elections ballot measure in anticipation in Portland, in anticipation that either the Supreme Court would make a decision or that we would get a ballot referral from the state legislature. And now we have both, actually. We still have a ballot measure coming in 2020 that I'm engaged in, that I'm working on, that will amend the Constitution to officially make contribution limits legal in the state of Oregon. So it's a huge step in the right direction. At the state level, it means we're going to have to make some really challenging decisions about what kind of limits to be establishing for statewide races. That's going to be a huge fight, frankly. But it's a really important conversation for us to be having. And then I think we have to make sure we're looking at public financing at the state level as well in order to make sure that candidates can run viable campaigns and afford to pay their staffs.
Thank you, Julia. I didn't know it when I asked it, but turns out that was our last question. And that's all the time that we have today. So we're going for questions, but we're going to move to closing remarks. Candidates, you'll each have 2 minutes to share with our audience and voters whatever you want, but maybe why they should vote for you for Commissioner Position 2. We'll start with Sam, followed by Tara, Dan, and Julia. 2 minutes, your closing statement. Let's start. Sam.
Thank you. I've spent my life focused on addressing poverty and homelessness, and with tools like homelessness, housing, and living wage jobs, and really addressing our environment and our air and water. And I have been deeply committed to building coalitions and communities in doing that work, and really see myself as being in council is in a position where I would step back and help those communities step forward and really empower and bring those communities to the table in our decision making. So I'm proud of the things I've been able to accomplish. I think we need somebody at the city that is able to really deliver on day one. This job will start by September, and we have an incredible challenge ahead of us in really rebuilding from this COVID pandemic. I would share my story a little bit, which is I lost my father when I was a teenager to mental illness and drug addiction. And I am deeply committed to making sure that people have the support they need to be successful in overcoming those barriers. People aren't going to be able to overcome those barriers on the street. We've got to have a housing and homeless system that is truly delivering on getting people into housing with the support that they need to be successful in staying in that housing and addressing those barriers. I hope you'll visit my website, see my plans, samchase4portland.com, and I hope you'll support me in this election on May 19th. Thank you. And also, I got a little bit of time. Please vote for the Here Together, vote for the initiative on the May ballot, the regional initiative for homeless services. It's a fantastic plan. We absolutely need it.
Thank you, Sam. Tara, your closing statement.
Yeah, so thanks everybody for joining us and doing this on a Friday at noontime. For the last 3 years, I've led the largest climate protection campaign in Oregon history to a huge success. And sadly, climate change will be many times worse than the crisis that we're experiencing right now. There's no question the climate crisis is about our health, our families, and our livelihoods. It's also an equity challenge. COVID is forcing us into a rebuilding moment. And I have the experience, the relationships, and the understanding to make Portland a climate leader. When I was chief of staff, our city's climate plan was recognized as the best in the world. But where are the leaders to carry the plan out? We're behind. I will make it a priority to lower pollution, invest in underserved communities, and create good paying jobs. We can clean the air, lower our energy bills, and rebuild better than before. Thank you again to the City Club and all the staff. It's been an incredible amount of work, I know, pulling all this together. Again, my name is Tara Hurst. I'm running for Portland City Council, Position 2, and I would love to earn your vote in the primary election. If you want to learn more about me, go to my website. It's Tera, Tera, 4pdx.com. And look forward to hearing more about what Portlanders are looking for in city leadership. I have the experience and the passion to push us forward on this. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Tara. Dan, floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, City Club staff and City Club members and all the guests who have stayed on through this cast. I'm so humbled to be on the ballot with so many passionate Portlanders. And I ask, how can you decide? COVID-19 is a really big test for humanity. It's requiring us to come together under shared conditions, shared sacrifice, shared compliance, along with creativity and shared resilience. I will be ready to serve on day one with a team of elected leaders who will be focused on our top priorities and won't get lost in the weeds of one siloed bureau. I asked Portland to, I really think it's great that Portland has a tendency to be weird. I'm one of those, but I really think on this one, we just got to stop being stupid. I will listen to the public health leaders. Living with HIV most of my life just helps me understand the complexity of science with experienced ability to translate that complexity to the general public. I will always advocate to keep residents sheltered in their homes for rent and mortgage relief, but I'll also advocate for the backbone of our economy, our vibrant creative class, our small businesses where many of you listening work. We cannot allow our shops to collapse. The market can be reimagined without the old paradigm of debt burden. The public health choreography that we're going to go through is going to be very complicated, but this choreographer is ready to lead this dance. We can do this, Portland. We can lead the nation in reimagining services for our residents during this pandemic. My heart's going to be open to so many, but especially the single mom with 8 kids in a 2-bedroom apartment in East Portland who's trying to do virtual distant learning. And I'll also be really thinking about the slim profit margins of those who have to clean up graffiti after a weekend. They all represent this vibrant city. It's time to pull together. True community assets are the people. And let's leave the egos at the door and let's get it done. Let's open up and think out of the box and be the city we deserve. My name is Dan Ryan, and 25 years later, I still feel great, and I'm ready for one more gig. The honor will be mine if I can serve all of you on City Council. Look me up on danryanforportland.com, and I so look forward to serving you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Julia, your closing statement.
All right. Thank you again to the City Club of Portland for pulling this together, and for all of you folks who are watching this for participating in our democracy. And also thank you, Jesse, for running a tight ship here. I appreciate it. I'm running for Portland City Council because I am so driven to get the results for the people of the city and for the communities of Portland, and to create a government that directly engages them in decision making, and that creates a system in which it's much easier for a diversity of folks to run for office and win and show up to work on behalf of their constituents. My 15-year career has been spent building broad, diverse coalitions for the long haul to win against powerful interests. And that means that it can't be about me. When you're running a coalition, no one's showing up because they work for you or they owe you anything. They're showing up because you have some collective goal that you're aiming toward. But getting everyone aimed in the same direction and continuing working and trying to be strategic means it cannot be about you. It has to be about the outcomes and about service. And that is how I am motivated. It is why I'm running for city council. I don't want to just talk about my experience, though. I want to talk about the support that I have in this campaign. I've been able to earn the endorsement of Joanne Hardesty, current city commissioner, the Sunrise Movement, the youth-led climate justice movement in Portland has endorsed my campaign. I've gotten the public sector unions to endorse me. The folks who work for the city of Portland want to see me in this seat because they trust me to get the job done for workers. I also have the support of educators with the Portland Association of Teachers and both PCC unions, Portland Community College unions. Bill Bradbury, the former Secretary of State, has supported me, as well as Bill McKibben, a climate justice leader. There are a lot of folks who see me as the leader for this time, especially as we head into the recovery from the COVID crisis. And I hope to have your vote on May 19th. You can check out my website at www.julia4pdx.com. Thank you,
Julia. Well, our time is up, y'all. Thank you so much to candidates Sam Chase, Julia DeGraw, Tara Hurst, and Dan Ryan for joining us today. And thanks to all of you joining us from home. We hope you'll join us for our future election programming over the next 2 weeks. You can find it and all City Club programming on our website, pdxcityclub.org, along with other in-depth local election coverage. Thank you again to today's sponsors, The Standard and SEIU 49, and to our media partners. We can't do this without you, KGW and X-Ray FM. For City Club to continue to provide quality, in-depth information to voters, especially in moments like these, we need your support now. Make a donation today. Whatever you can give matters. If each of us gave $5, we would make our goal. Just text Support City Club, all one word, to 44321. That's Support City Club, all one word, to 44321. Let's all work together to keep democracy moving forward. Please stay engaged and ask questions in between these events. You can still email us at questions@pdxcityclub.org or on social media using the hashtag CityClubDebate. Let's find out what's possible when we truly make space for everyone to connect, share ideas, and build for the future. Stay home, stay safe, and don't forget to take the census. We are adjourned.